Welcome to my channel. My name is Lois, also known as the World Stitches. Today we're going to be learning how to make this gown with a basket sleeve and a basket upper part. Let's get right into it. So I've already put my cloth on fold and I've marked out my starting line. What we're going to do is to get our vertical measurement. So we're going to start by marking out our bust point. The bust point I'm working with is 11. Get my half waist, which is 17. Get my hip line, and I'm also going to get my full length, the full length of the gown. Since it's not a fitted gown, there's no need for us to measure the under bust. So what we're going to do is to measure all this and connect the lines to get our lines to connect to get a straight line. So the next thing we're going to do is to mark out our neck width. The neck width I'm working with is 4.5. So 4.5. So I'm going to measure 4.5. And after that, I'm going to impute my shoulder measurement. I'm going to impute my shoulder measurement. The shoulder I'm working with is 17. 17 plus half plus 1 inches, that's half inches on both sides. Everything is going to be 18. So on fold, I'm going to be marking 9 inches on fold. So from that 9 inches point, I'm going to come down by 1 inches to get my shoulder slant. And I'm going to connect my neck width to the shoulder slant, just like I am doing right now. And from there, I'm going to mark out my armhole line. Okay, so I measured 8 inches, then I just went to ahead to draw my armhole curve rather. So the next thing we're going to do is to get the horizontal measurement. The bust measurement is 46. 46 divided by 4, that's 11.5. Since it's a free gown, I'm adding extra 1 inches. Extra 1 inches for ease. So 11.5 plus extra 1 inches for ease. Then after that, I'm going to add 2 inches extra for sewing allowance. I hope you get me. It's a free gown. The person is not going to be using a zip, so that's why I did that. On the half waist too, the half waist too is 46 divided by 4, 11.5 plus 1 inches extra and 2 inches sewing allowance. I did the same thing too for the hip, added 1 inches extra sewing allowance and also 2 inches added 1 inches ease allowance and then 2 inches sewing allowance, and then I just connected the lines down. It's a free gown, so I just connected it down, just like you see me doing now. So on the neckline, I'm going to get my neck depth. I'm making use of 4. Then I'm just going to connect it back to the neck width, which is 4.5. And that's what I am doing. So on the shoulder line, on the slant, I'm going to add extra half inches allowance for joining. I love adding it immediately because sometimes I forget. So you're just going to add it to your shoulder line to make it easier for you. And then we're just going to cut out the dress. So after cutting it, I went ahead to use it to cut out my back. I added 2 inches zipper allowance. So I'm not adding zip, but I just added the allowance just in case. So what we're going to do now is to cut out the side we're going to use for our basket for the front side. So I'm going to be using 7.5 inches. I'm going to place my tape from the main shoulder measurement minus the half inches allowance. Then we're going to cut. But I want to add extra half inches allowance for sewing. So instead of marking out 7.5 inches, I'm going to mark out 7 inches. So that means I've already added half inches to the main fabric. So we're going to cut out 7 inches now. You can cut out as much as you want. So now we are done marking out the 7 inches. So just like you see, we have 7 inches already. I marked out 7 inches and that is what I am going to be using. So I'm going to cut it out and transfer it to my pattern paper. So I've transferred it to the pattern paper. So I added half inches allowance to the bottom. Since you remember I added half inches allowance to the main fabric, so I added these two so that when we're joining, we will not have shortage. What we're going to do next now is to mark out our lines for the baskets. So the basket I'll be using, I want it to have 1 inches different. So I'm just going to mark it like you see me doing, 1 inches at the bottom, 1 inches at the top. I'm going to repeat the same thing all through, and then I am going to connect the lines. Just watch as I do it. It is very simple. 1 inch is different, then you connect the lines together. So the first thing I did was to connect my vertical lines. Then we're going to do the same thing to horizontally. So for the other line, we're also going to do the same thing. You're just going to mark out 1 inches from at the right, at the left, 1 inches. You see, 1 inches, and I'm also going to do the same thing at the right, 1 inches difference. So when you mark it, you're still going to have equal parts. Then you connect from one end to the other end. That's the simplest way you can do it. You connect from one end to the other end, and that's it. So here it is. We already have everything laid out. We're just going to sew on the lines. So we're going to repeat the same thing too for the sleeve. So for the sleeve, I've already cut it out. The sleeve length I'm working with is 22. So I just cut out 7 inches from the sleeve, and that's what I'm going to be. I'll transfer it to my pattern paper, and that's what I'm going to use to draft to make my basket. So you can cut as much as you want, but 7 is still okay. So I've gone ahead to repeat the same process we did for the top on the sleeve. 1 inch is difference, 1 inch space in between. So I'm going to do that too for the second sleeve. So this is what we have. I'm going to repeat the same process on the second sleeve pattern. The next thing we're going to do is to cut out our strip, or should I call it our what we're going to use to make the basket. So you can cut as long as you can. The width I worked with was 1.5 inches. I'm working with 1.5 inches. So you're just going to fold it into two, just like you see me doing. Fold it into two, then you fold again. Fold into two, and then you fold again. So what we're going to do is, after folding like that, you're going to place it in between the line, like it's going to be in the middle. Then you sew. So what we're going to do is to first of all sew horizontally first before we sew vertically. So you place in between the lines and then you sew. So you're going to repeat the same process all through. You place in between the line, fold your fabric. So you have to cut as many as you can. I can't really see how many I cut out, but just cut and then you sew. You're going to repeat this process so you're done sewing everything. So I did the same thing too for the sleeve. I repeated the same process, sewed horizontally and vertically. The next thing we're going to do is to pipe the edge, one of the edge, since we're going to be attaching the other edge to the sleeve. So the same thing you did, you're going to fold it into two equal parts. This time around, instead of folding it again, you're going to place the paper, that's the basket, you're going to place it in between it, and then you fold. After folding, then you sew. You understand? Fold it into two, then you place the paper in between it. then you sew on it. So after sewing, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to give it a neat finishing. You're just going to notch and attach from the top. So what we're going to do now is to attach the basket to the main fabric. I didn't know my phone was not filming when I was taping the neck. I didn't know my phone was follow the same process to just turn the neck to give it a neat finishing. So you're going to notch both the baskets and the main fabric for you to know the midpoint. That's what I'm doing. Then after you're done notching, you're going to join it together. So what you're going to do is to flip your basket just like this. You flip it like this. Then you're going to join it by that place that you notch. You can make use of your pin. If you're good, you don't need to use a pin. You can just use your pin to pin the basket and the main fabric. Do not join the lining. Do not join the lining. You're just going to pin the basket and the main fabric. I've already turned the lining with my fabric. So what you're going to do is you're going to flip the lining over. You're going to flip the lining over to the top. So when you do it like this, that means your basket is going to be in the middle, your main fabric is going to be at the back, and then your lining is going to be at the top. So after joining, you're going to flip it over, then you're going to sew. So that way when you're done sewing, the allowance is not going to be showing outside. Instead, it's going to be showing inside, and it's going to give it a neat finishing. So just do, if you don't understand, you can rewind it and watch again. So what you're going to do, we're just going to sew it just like I pinned it. We're just going to sew it, and we're going to see how it looks. So after sewing, this is what we have. It is looking neat. Look at the back. You're not going to see the sewing allowance. So that is how you're supposed to do it if you're making use of a lining. But if you're not, you can just weave it. So to remove the paper, you can just dip your hand inside or wet it with a paper to remove it. It's very easy to actually remove. You're just going to repeat the same thing and get all the paper off. So you're going to repeat the same thing too for the fabric. You're going to join it the same way we joined the body. So you get the main point, the midpoint rather, on your basket. You get the midpoint on your main sleeve, and you're going to attach it like this. You're going to join both the basket and the main fabric together. After doing that, we're now going to add our lining. We're going to add our lining to sew it just like the way we did it. The basket is going to be in the middle, the lining is going to be on top of the basket, the main fabric is going to be under the baskets. So you're going to join it together. You're just going to sew at this side, then on the side you're just going to move these baskets. You're going to move the basket we did in a little bit so that you'll be able to sew the sleeve by the side. So after sewing, this is how it's going to look. It's going to look very clean. So you're going to repeat the same thing too for the other sleeve. So what we're going to do next after sewing our sleeve is to join our bodies together. So you're going to take the back and the front, you're going to join it together, place the front on the back, and then we're going to join it by the shoulder. So we're going to join it by the shoulder. So what we're going to do is to just first trim off the excess. If you have excess, you can just trim it off. Then you can just cross check with the other shoulder if it is equal. So just have to make sure that everything is equal before you start joining. So you're just going to check it. That's what I'm doing. I'm checking if the shoulders are equal. So I'm just going to trim off the excess. So on the shoulder line, you're going to place it like this. You're going to attach the front to the back, just the main fabric alone. Then the lining, you're going to flip it over. So the front shoulder is going to be in between the back fabric and the back lining. Do you get? So it's going to give it a neat finishing. Do not forget, you're going to place the front in the middle, the back lining at the top, and the back main fabric at the other side. After sewing it, you're going to sew it like that, and after doing it, you're just going to sew by the side. So I'm going to sew it. So this is how it looks after joining. I've joined it by the shoulder and I've also joined it by the side. The next thing we're going to do now is to attach our sleeve on it. You're going to trim off any excess. You're going to measure your armhole, of course. If you have any excess, you're going to trim it off. Then you attach your sleeve. So I'm just going to measure my armhole measurement, join my sleeve, and then I attach it to the main fabric. Do not forget to subscribe to my channel, like, share, turn on your notification, and I would also like to know what you think about this tutorial. Do not forget to drop a comment. Thank you. See you on the next one.